All right, so today is just a continuation, more practice from yesterday. The only difference is we are gonna do another one or two with the GCF just because that one may be the one y'all need a little more practice with, okay? So first thing you should always do is look for a GCF, okay? So we have 3, 16, and negative 12. If you start with your smallest number, not meaning smallest, because negative 12 would be the smallest, right? Because it's negative. But just looking at the number, not the including the sign, if you start with your smallest number, like the only things that multiply to give me 3 is 1 times 3. So those are the only possible common factors that I could have, right? Because obviously 1 times 16 multiplies to give me 16, but 16 can't be common for all three because obviously 3 and 12 are not going to be divisible by 16, right? So really you just need to look at 1 and 3. But if that's confusing for you, you can still do it this way, and it works perfectly fine. Okay, so if I just started with the smallest one to 1 times 3, then I would see if 16 and 12 are both divisible by 3, because if so, that would be my GCF. Since 16 is not divisible by 3, then my GCF is just 1. And when your GCF is just 1, you don't worry about your GCF anymore, because if I were to divide everything by 1, nothing changes when you divide by 1, right? So you just move on and you do your X box. So we want A times C in our B. My A is 3, B is 16, and C is negative 12, okay? So 3 times a negative 12 gives us a negative 36, and my B is 16. So I want to figure out everything that would multiply to be 36, and then we'll think about our negative. So 1 times 36, 2 times 18, 3 times 12, 4 and 9, and then 6 and 6, okay? So since they need a multiply to equal a negative number, one of these would have to be negative, okay? But when you add them together, it's going to be positive, which means the larger number needs to be positive, okay? Adding them together, if it stays positive, the larger one's what's going to keep it positive. Okay, so I make my smaller ones negative, and the ones that would combine to give me a 16 would be negative 2 and 18. So I'm going to say x minus 2 since my 2 is negative, and then I'm going to say x plus 18 since my 18 is positive. And then I've got to remember to go back and divide by my a value, which is 3. Okay. 2/3 does not simplify, so we're going to slide that 3 in front. So we have 3x minus 2. And 18 divided by 3 is 6, so we get x plus 6. And that is our answer. All right, another example. So for this example, first thing, just like the last one, or like you should always do, is look for a GCF. So we have 5, 30, 25. I'm going to start with the smallest one. The only thing that will multiply to give me 5 is 1 times 5, which means the only common factors that they all three could have in common are 1 or 5. So I'm going to look and see if 30 is divisible by 5. Well, 5 times 6 gives me 30, and 5 times 5 gives me 25. So 5 is going to be my GCF, okay? But then if you notice, each term also has an x, right? We start with an x cubed, not an x squared, like we should have started with when we have 3 terms, okay? So all of them have at least one x. So our GCF is actually a 5x, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to divide everything by a 5x. And I'm going to put my 5x out front, okay? So if I had a 5x cubed, and I divided it by 5x. 5 divided by 5 is 1. And if you had 3 x's and you took 1 away, that would leave you with a 1x squared, right? And then we have 30x squared divided by 5x. 30 divided by 5 would be a positive 6. And then if I had x squared, that means 2 x's. 1 would cancel out one of them, leaving you just 1. And then 25x divided by 5x. X divided by x is just 1. 25 divided by 5 is 5. Okay. Now our numbers look a lot smaller. Okay. Otherwise, you would be trying to figure out everything that would multiply to give you 125. So this looks a lot prettier, right? So this is one of my factors. I've got to factor this trinomial now to get my other 2. Okay. So we're going to do our box. A times C and our B. So my A is 1, B is 6, and C is 5. So 1 times 5 is 5, B is 6. So the only things that multiply to give you 5 is 1 times 5. So there we go. And bring my 5x down. And I'm going to have an x plus 1. And I'm going to have an x plus 5. So these are my 3 factors. 5x is a factor, x plus 1 is a factor, and x plus 5 is a factor. And yes, I would have needed to go back and divide these 2 values by my a. Since a is just 1, dividing by 1 wouldn't change anything, okay? So this would just stay my answer, how it was, right? But yes, always remember to go back and divide by a. All right, so here's our trinomial 2x squared minus 6x minus 8. Ignore this little scratch out, okay? So I'm going to look first and foremost for a GCF. So I'm going to start with my smallest number. 1 times 2 is the only thing that multiplies to give me 2. So those are the only options we can have for common factors, right? So I'm going to see, is 6 divisible by 2? Well, 2 times 3 would give me 6. And 2 times 4 would give me 8. So we do have a GCF. We have a GCF of 2. They don't all have an x. This one doesn't have an x, right? So GCF is just 2. So we're going to divide everything by 2, right? I'm factoring it out. So a 2x squared divided by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, so we get 1x squared. Negative 6x divided by 2. Negative 6 divided by 2 gives me negative 3x. And negative 8 divided by 2 gives me a negative 4. Okay, so now I can do my box. A times C and my B. So A equals 1, B equals negative 3, C equals negative 4, so we get negative 4 and negative 3. So we can either do 1 times 4 or 2 times 2. To add together and be a negative, your larger one needs to be negative. So we can see the one that works is a positive 1 and a negative 4. Don't forget your 2. So we have 2, and then x plus 1, and x minus 4, okay? Normally I need to go back and divide by my a value. Since my a here is just 1, dividing by 1 wouldn't change anything, so this is our answer. You'll also see a question that asks you which factor do these 2 polynomials have in common, okay? So what that means is, for example, this one has 3 factors, 2, x plus 1 and x minus 4. Which factor is the same here that is the same here? So let's look and see, okay? So we would look 3, 2, and 5, or negative 2, negative 5. 1 and 3 are the only factors for 3. 2 is not divisible by 3, 5 is not divisible by 3. So their GCF is just going to be 1. So we don't have to do anything differently there. So we're going to do our x box, our a times c, and our b. A is 3, b is negative 2, c is negative 5. So 3 times a negative 5 gives us negative 15. And our b is a negative 2. So things that will multiply to give me 15 is 1 times 15, 3 times 5. Since it's got to multiply to be a negative and then add to be a negative, we need our larger one to be negative. So positive 3 and a negative 5 would combine to be negative 2, and then would also multiply to be negative 15. So we are going to say x plus 3 and x minus 5, okay? But we've got to remember to go back and divide by our a value, which is 3. 3 divided by 3 would simplify to x plus 1. And then this one doesn't simplify, so 3 slides to the front. So if I want to know which factor these two had in common, their common factor would be, let's see, common factor for both of the different examples would be the x plus 1, okay? Because they both have a factor of x plus 1.